evening. We begin tonight with the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. 2 weeks after charging that the government of Libya was behind the bombing 3 years ago over Lockerbie, Scotland, the U.S. and Britain today have demanded that Libya accept responsibility and hand over for trial the two men who were specifically indicted. In Libya, Colonel Gaddafi insists that his government has been unfairly accused. And ABC's Pierre Salinger is the only reporter to interview the two men who are charged with killing 270 people.
Abdelbaset al-Megrahi is accused of being the mastermind of the Pan Am 103 bombing, but he vigorously denies it.
You accuse me falsely.
The American indictment said Megrahi was the chief of security for Libyan Arab Airlines. Megrahi said he was just a dispatcher and that he was not on the island of Malta on the crucial day of December 21st, 1988, as the indictment charged. That was the day when a suitcase containing a bomb was allegedly put on an Air Malta flight to Frankfurt and then transferred to Pan Am 103.
In 20 of December or 21 or in that time, I wasn't there, believe me. I was here in Tripoli with my family.
He showed us a passport with a stamp indicating he was in Malta on another important date, December 7th, when the indictment says he went to this store and bought clothes and an umbrella that were later found in the wreckage of Pan Am 103.
Believe me, I didn't go to any shop there, and even what they said, umbrella. No, even umbrella. What are you doing with umbrella?
Megrahi said he had been in Malta many times on business, and so many people knew him that it would have been impossible for him to use a false passport, as the U.S. indictment alleges. He denies any involvement in Libyan intelligence, particularly any role in ordering timing devices to be used with explosives.
If you give me a timer now, I can't recognize if it is timer or something like this, you see, unless you tell me this is a timer.
U.S. authorities are relying on the diary belonging to the second Libyan suspect, Al-Amin Khalifa Fima. It is alleged that Fima wrote a reminder to himself to obtain Air Malta baggage tags. Tags, the indictment says, were stolen and used to label the suitcase that exploded.
I worked for the airlines. Those tags are readily available on the counter. Anybody can pick them up.
Fima, who also worked for the Libyan airline, also denies any role in the bombing. U.S. and British authorities claim they have a lot of evidence, including eyewitness identification, that implicates the two men. Tonight, the Libyan Foreign Minister, Ibrahim Bashari, said the United States and Britain had prejudged the case for political reasons.
We're not against investigation. We're not against judges coming from America, from Britain, on one condition, that they respect the legal system of Libya.
Behind the indictment of the two Libyans is the belief that the attack on Pan Am 103 was revenge for the U.S. air attack on Tripoli in 1986. The U.S. air raid targeted the Libyan leader, Muammar Gaddafi, whose bombed house still lies in rubble. In a private meeting with ABC News, Colonel Gaddafi expressed anger at the indictment of the two Libyans, but otherwise seemed to have mellowed somewhat towards the United States. While President Reagan had launched the attack on Libya by himself, Gaddafi said President Bush had gathered an international consensus during the Gulf crisis. Gaddafi said he thinks he can reach better relations with President Bush and with Secretary of State James Baker, who Gaddafi called balanced and reasonable. But Gaddafi still feels persecuted by the United States. Libya is becoming a bottle of Pepsi-Cola, he said. They shake it, until it explodes. Pierre Salinger, ABC News, Tripoli, Libya.
In their indictments, the U.S. and Britain charge that the two Libyans are not airline employees, but Libyan intelligence agents. What the two governments plan to do if Libya does not turn them over has been left deliberately vague. ABC's John McWethy on some of the options.
The Bush administration says the evidence is overwhelming and that without an immediate response by Libya, the U.S. and its friends will act.
And this is something that we take deadly seriously, that these are something that was a barbarous act that was committed against innocent people.
Though the United States has no trade with Libya and no diplomatic relations, many of America's friends do, and that is at the heart of U.S. strategy. Working with Britain and France, the Bush administration plans to urge other countries to squeeze Libya economically and isolate it diplomatically. About the only thing Libya sells to the world, the basis of its economy, is oil. That will be a primary target getting countries in Europe who purchase more than half of Libya's oil not to buy. Another target will be to limit airports at which Libyan commercial planes can land and to stop flights of other airlines to Libya. The hardest to convince may be Italy, which is by far Libya's biggest trade partner. Other key trade countries include Germany and Japan. The U.S. is making a point of not ruling out any option, including a military one. In fact, just raising it in public serves a useful purpose. It keeps Libya off balance, and it encourages the Europeans to support sanctions to keep the U.S. from playing its military card. John McWethy, ABC News, the State Department.
Still overseas, the governments of Israel and Syria and the Palestinians have all responded today to the invitation from Washington that they come and hold peace talks in Washington next week. Syria and the Palestinians say yes. The Israelis say yes, but. Israel says it will go to Washington, but on December the 9th, not on December the 4th. ABC's Dean Reynolds on why.
In public, the Israeli government portrayed its request for a delay in the negotiations simply as a desire for more time to get ready. But privately, one cabinet minister was quoted as saying it was time to teach the Americans a lesson, that no one can dictate orders to Israel, a widely held opinion here.
This is not, shouldn't be conducted by ultimatums, show up or else. We're dealing here with the life of a nation.
At the State Department in Washington, officials accentuated the positive, complimenting Israel for accepting Washington as the site, but leaving open the possibility that the Arabs may well show up on schedule next week without the Israelis.
We will have the negotiation facilities ready and open on December 4, and they will be available on dates after December 4.
Potentially more troublesome than the date is the Israeli reluctance to talk to more than one Arab delegation on any given day because they fear the Arabs would gang up on them. And Israel wants the talks shifted soon to the Middle East, something they would see as a dramatic acknowledgement by the Arabs of Israel's place in the region. As for the 5-day delay, achieving that would give Prime Minister Shamir and the Israelis a feeling of independence, but it will not allay their deep concerns that Washington is appeasing the Arabs. Officials here point to the American wording of the invitations, which included suggestions to discuss, among other things, territorial compromise on the Golan Heights, a withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon, and concrete proposals for Palestinian self-rule. For the Israelis, it is much too early to put that kind of substance on the negotiating table. That's why the focus here is still firmly on dates and places and little else. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
In a moment, the other news. Congress on the way home after another fight over who gets blamed for the state of the economy. Pollution and health are on the American agenda tonight. Toxic waste along the border with Mexico. And finally this evening, the police, who have a new way to get drunk